Nothing exists in a vacuum. Without death, there cannot be life. It's often this yin or yang situation where the two complement each other. One makes room for the other, and the other makes room for the original. In many ways and in many situations, it is only through death that new life can begin. Now, before I get ahead of myself, what are we even talking about? How does someone or something dying create life? Well, to answer this, let's broaden our scope. What is life? Is life just you and me existing like other mammals? Is it just organic compounds such as cells or things that are made up of cells? Well, I would argue life also exists in the abstract sense, such as ideas. While ideas don't exist in the physical realm, they only exist in the depths of our imagination, our fascinations, our thoughts, fears, creativity, passions, etc. Human beings have a profound ability to turn something that doesn't actually exist, in this case, thoughts and ideas, into real-world inventions. We bring life to abstract concepts, then we bring practical utility to them. Until the late 19th century, we traveled around on horses. The first car, as it was in the first original creation, didn't come about until 1885. Then we made the first leap in aviation and our first try at flying around in around 1903, less than 2 decades after the first car engine was created. It is through this abstract creation of life that we have been able to surpass all other creatures on Earth and why we have been so successful. We breathe life into ideas. Ideas that cause unimaginable pain and terror, along with immense kindness and comfort. We are able to imagine terrible human suffering and make that a reality, while simultaneously holding keys to human growth, human extension of life, eradication of diseases, and inventions to increase human comfort, along with all other creatures on Earth. Well, what happens when you abandon an idea? A dream you had of being a rock star, or an idea and plan for how to get in shape. Abandon the idea and it dies. Not necessarily a mortal death, but it still dies nonetheless. Nothing is keeping it alive, much like Tinkerbell from Peter Pan. If nobody believes in her, she doesn't exist. I would argue that not only is it our ability to create life from our ideas that has led us to making such unimaginable progress, but our willingness to let ideas die, to leave room for new ideas, better ideas, stronger ideas, is actually the only way great ideas come about in the first place. For every great invention, hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of ideas had to die in its wake. It is this ability to bring life and death to our ideas that distinguishes us from other creatures so vastly. We didn't get the modern day phone overnight. It took years worth of ideas. Many worked, many failed, and that's how innovation was made. With this dissection of how ideas are living elements in a very abstract sense, what happens when we won't let an idea die? I would argue the greatest threat to human life is the undying idea. An undying idea, much like skeletons or zombies from a video game, is a corpse of something once alive. Something that's not quite alive, something that shouldn't be alive, and yet it does not die. Though a much different topic, one we certainly don't have the time to get into today, the undying idea is much like a lie and has very similar overlap with a lie. Something that while it does exist, it does not exist in reality like a proper idea, and can only exist in imagination and fantasy. It's a failed idea, something that we could not make physical and cannot be made physical, with the rules of the physical world at mass contradiction with the idea itself. In modern culture, particularly the West, the undying idea has grown from a small skeleton into an abomination that becomes less and less ignorable with each new participant in its unending resurrection. So what exactly is an undying idea? This terrible problem I'm so vaguely discussing. The undying idea is an idea with 2 important components, of which are vital to its existence. Without one, then you don't have an undying idea even if you have the other. They both need to be present. So the first component is the idea has to be associated with myself. The idea is no longer something I simply associate with my goals, my interests, nor something I simply aspire toward. It's a part of me, who I am, and without it, without the idea, I no longer am the person I believe myself to be. I hold it that closely in extreme regard. An extreme example of this would be something akin to, I believe I have 3 arms and 3 legs. Now, if I do in fact have 3 arms and 3 legs, then this idea could not be an undying idea due to the second component, which is, if the idea is proven to be impossible, or simply factually incorrect, i.e., I do not in actuality have 3 arms and legs as much as I'd like to, but I refuse to accept this because I so personally align myself with this idea that to question the validity of the idea itself is to question the validity of my own existence, of who I am. A more common example of the undying idea in modern day is the belief that the earth is flat. For people who believe this, they so personally carry this idea that despite numerous attempts at proving it incorrect, they deny the validity of the proof. For these zombified remnants of ideas, nothing is acceptable for keeping it slain. Nothing keeps it dead. The requirements to disprove the idea will continue to change and become less and less reasonable. Not because the requirements aren't valid in the first place, but because to question these ideas is an attack on the individual themselves and thus cannot be accepted no matter the cost. So how is this even dangerous? And furthermore, how is this the greatest threat to human life? Isn't that a bit of a dramatic claim? While the statement sounds hyperbolic, I can assure you if it isn't the greatest threat, it surely comes close. Let's discuss the dangers of this. In a vacuum, this only affects the individual who keeps the idea from dying. However, we have evolved technologically to the point where it's very easy to communicate with a large number of people in a short period of time. We no longer have to leave our house to talk to people one-on-one and instead have the capability of talking with multiple people in an instant online. The ability to communicate so frequently, while a blessing, also comes with the ability to block dissenting voices with ease, limiting objection to our ideals, and instead creating a space where only those who agree with us are who we're going to see most of the time. So not only are we able to remove the very important debate aspect of conversation, but we reinforce the ideas with others who agree, bolstering our own ideas, even the ones that don't make any sense, irregardless of whether logic and reality even aligns with these ideas to begin with. Often, this removes the chance that we accept the possibility that our idea is flawed, and not only halts progress, but begins momentum in the opposite direction, away from progress and towards civilization regression. Now here's the unfortunate truth. There is no such thing as staying exactly in the same spot. You're either moving forward or backward, whether you can see that or not. And so if you're not moving forward civilization-wise, you are regressing. Now the speed to which you're doing this varies vastly. However, the more people that are contributing to the regression does push you back further much faster. Simply like pushing a boulder in one direction or the other. Long before the internet, there was living proof of this concept, using, for example, the Soviet Union, which not only had an incredible murder rate of their own people to sustain their societal undying idea, but in a parallel to the situation we find ourselves in, modern day quieting dissenting opinions, the Soviet Union did not allow any conversations that wasn't a contributor to their undying ideas. Those who did question the ideas or spoke with dissenting opinions were not just quieted, but more often than not, they were reported by friends, family members, neighbors, co-workers, etc., and either put to death or imprisoned for what they called a tenor, aka 10 years in prison. The inability to engage in the battle of ideas ultimately leads to death, and the life it brings perpetuates this cycle further until the system cannot sustain itself and collapses on itself like a dying star. So this conversation is admittedly pretty bleak. These are pretty serious, topics that I'm diving into. What is the solution? How do you kill the undying idea before it consumes people? I don't have all of the answers, but these are my general thoughts from what I've been able to observe and just people who are more intelligent than me also speaking in on the topic. A big factor for avoiding the situation altogether and dealing with it is making a conscious effort to let the idea remain its own entity instead of attaching it to yourself. when we become too invested in an idea and treat it as part of ourselves, it becomes much more difficult to let the idea die. A good mindset to hold is that ideas exist for many reasons, one of which being to die so we don't have to. If we have an idea that's just stupid, such as fighting a polar bear, P.S. You're not gonna win. Polar bears are absolute monsters. I saw a picture of one the other day, and it was insanely big. But either way, you either let the idea die, or you fight the polar bear and you die instead. And to do this, you have to accept reality, whatever it is, even if it contradicts your own personal desires. Additionally, a proponent of the undying idea is a lack of humility. Admitting and accepting when you're wrong is difficult by itself. Doing so when you lack humility becomes even more challenging and often impossible to actually do. We like being right. It can make us feel secure, confident, and powerful. When holding on to a lie, what we don't realize is we're only holding on to an illusion, a false sense of bravado and an unreal sense of comfort. To achieve these desires, one must be willing to cling to reality even when inconvenient, as it is the only true path to strength. So to close, I do hope you enjoyed this topic. I really enjoyed dissecting philosophy and ideas and breaking them down into concepts small enough to grapple with. I think that philosophy is sort of the abstract version of physical matter that makes all things, especially as it comes to human beings. And it's a very interesting topic and field that I like to dive into. For those of you who made it this far, what do you think? What did I get wrong in this video? What idea of mine needs to die? I appreciate all of you for watching, much love to you all, and stay safe out there.